I've learned to take care of it. And so first of all, I want to tell you that I am a UC Master Gardener, and the Master Gardener program in the state of California is under the auspices of the University of California. And I'm going to scroll my presentation here because it has a little, tells you about the UC Master Gardener program. And it's a volunteer program. We apply to, it's a program under the auspices of the University of California. All land grant universities in the United States offer Master Gardener programs. And, but if you live, and they're county specific. So if you're interested, and we encourage you to, if you're interested in gardening and want to share with the public your knowledge, learn and share, like I'm doing today, the Master Gardener program in your county is the one that you apply to. And I belong to the San Mateo, San Francisco County chapters. That's one program, we're combined. And we have one of the services, and all of this is free. This is your tax dollars at work. Services that we offer the public is a helpline. And the helpline is in 3 locations in San Francisco and 2 in San Mateo County. And I posted here, this slide shows you the locations and their schedules. And let's see, let me take care of some business here. Let's go back to my slide here. And, oh, what is happening? I'm trying to control my presentation. All right. My presentation has gone a little berserk here. Let me get back to my sharing my presentation. There it is. All right, there's my presentation. All right, so I was telling about UC Master Gardeners. And one of the things that we do as Master Gardeners is we do presentations like I'm doing today. And I chose to tell you about the native garden that my husband and I and my kids planted. We started this process. It was a long process because but before I get into that, let me tell you about native plants. And native plants are plants that have adapted to their environment. They were here long before the plants that we see in most manicure gardens. They have adapted to their environment, and they are the ones that will grow the best if you place them where they belong. And most of the California native plants, some are choosier than others, but there are ways to figure out which ones are happiest in your location. My location happens to be near a creek, and there are a lot of oak trees here. So I've designated it a riparian oak woodland area. And they're different. Natives are different than your regular plants that you see in most manicured gardens, you know, your conventional garden, the kind of plants that you would buy at a nursery. Those have different needs than native plants. Native plants tend to go dormant in the winter time. And then they get their, the rainy season is usually in the summertime, or right about now, well, the winter time, and then it'll extend as it has lately. But so a lot of them come to life in the spring, through the summer and the fall, and then they go dormant, unlike manicure gardens. Now, the other thing about native plants is that they are grown in, if you have the right plant in the right place, like if a plant needs shade, you want to make sure that you create a shady spot for it. And if it needs lots of sun, you put it in the right kind of sunlight that it needs. So the links that you see highlighted in my presentation, they all have an embedded online site that I'm going to click on it so you can see. It will take you to a website where you can read more about that particular subject. So throughout my presentation, which you are going to receive as a PDF after I speak, you can go through and click on these embedded links and go and learn more about the plants and which plants are best for your location. Now, a lot of people think that native plants are less attractive than conventional plantings, and that's why I posted this one, which is a mallow, and this is probably 2 or 3 plants, and it probably gets quite a bit of water. It may even have some fertility in that soil. This is in the San Carlos city of San Carlos, and it's a little piece of land next to the city hall. And they asked the master gardeners if they would be interested in planting. And this is what they came up with. It's a whole little space there with native plants, and they have demonstrations, they educate, they teach the public how to divide, how to prune, you name it. It is a functional garden there. And I put links in so that you can see where this is and you can visit it. It's open to the public. This is an apricot mallow, and it's my example of how spectacularly beautiful natives can be. So the reason that we chose to plant our garden with native plants is because we live in a rural part of the county. We live in unincorporated Menlo Park, which is San Mateo County. We're next to San Francisco Creek. This neighborhood is very old. It was subdivided in the 1920s, and it's covered with oak trees and buckeyes and a few other natives. And so we, being a frugal family, we wanted to conserve water. We also wanted to attract wildlife, birds and butterflies, and we have wildlife just naturally around us. We have squirrels, raccoons, skunks, opossums, owls, you name it. They're all over the place because we have a lot of trees. We also wanted to fit the natural environment. When we bought the house in 1988, 1986, we bought the house. It had been landscaped in a very manicured manner, and we loved the location, we loved the house, we didn't like the garden that much. And being a very young family, at that time we only had a 1-year-old, and we later on went on to have more kids. We were busy and we neglected the garden, and that garden slowly but surely over the years died off from lack of care, and the irrigation broke and it didn't get watered. So our yard was not very presentable for a very long time. And while that was happening and we're raising a family, we're talking about the garden that we wanted to have and learning about our environment. And one of our neighbors up the lane had natives in her garden, and her garden always looked fantastic, and it was loaded with birds and all sorts of things, and it was just an inspiration. And that was, I think, our biggest influence, is seeing a native garden and how beautiful it could be and how it fit our surroundings. So that was our motivation. And here's a picture of our street. So like I said, we are in, it's called Stanford Weekend Acres. It was subdivided in the 1920s, and it was not, it it was not, they didn't come in and level it or anything like that. So all the original elevations still exist, and they subdivided it plot by plot. And our lot was created in the 1950s, I believe. And so this neighborhood, the original neighborhood, did not have any street lights. It did not have a sewer. It has a sewer now. It did not have water. People had wells. We have water now. It does not have sidewalks, and our street still doesn't have drainage. It does not have storm drains. We do not have fire hydrants. So the fire department regularly comes to our neighborhood and our street specifically to figure out how they would fight a fire. And so I'm just giving you some background as to what our environment looked like. And in our opinion, a manicured garden didn't fit. We felt like a native garden would look more fitting, and it was more to our taste. So this picture on the right-hand side is a picture of our house before we did our landscaping. And we did our landscaping, I think it was 2009. And as I told you, we neglected the manicured garden. We did garden over the years. I tried to grow roses there in the front. You can see I tried to climbing roses. We didn't get enough sun really for that. And the other thing that happened was that we started collecting rocks because we're down by the San Francisco Creek. It's alluvial, and there was a lot of rocks underneath the soil. So whenever our neighbors dug in their gardens, they were coming up with a lot of rocks that they had to get rid of. And these weren't little rocks, as you can see, they were good sizes. And so we started asking people to give us their rocks. And so we had rock piles for a few years in among the weeds in our garden. And we didn't know then what we're going to do with them, but we started collecting rocks, and eventually we decided on a native garden. And this is what you see on the left side. This is in 2009 when we finally decided what we were going to do. And that's what my presentation is all about, this process that we came up with, how we went about it, and what kind of plants we ended up with, and what I learned along the way. Now, one of the things with natives, I gave this presentation originally with another master gardener who's about my age, and we're in our 70s. And we both were laughing because when we first installed our gardens, we thought, oh, natives, they take care of themselves, right? You just plant them and get them established, and then you don't have to do anything else. Well, it's not. They're a lot easier than a manicured garden, but they do need care, and you do need to learn to take care of them. So there was definitely a learning curve once our garden got established. And you do need to keep them watered, and you water them more generously in the beginning when they get established, so that the roots get down into the ground. And then once they're mature, then you can turn off the irrigation and depend on rainwater. But in California, our rain is not dependable. So you do have to pay attention. I have had several of my natives, established natives, die because of the drought, and because I wasn't paying attention to their need for water. And so there is a learning curve involved. It's not just plant it and then forget about it. So what you see here in the left-hand side, what we ended up doing with all those rocks that we collected is we created a little stacked wall. So we created some elevation next to the driveway. This is my driveway right here. And we planted goldenrod, it looks like, and a few other things. Now, this goldenrod never did well because there's not enough sun. It had the same problem that this climbing rose has. These are plants that need more sun than they were getting at that place. All right. So here is what our house looked like at the time that we installed the landscaping. And I'm going to tell you how we went about selecting our landscape in our next one. The picture here also shows you a permeable, this is concrete and it's permeable. So remember I mentioned that we do not have storm drains. Some of our neighborhood is newer and the county has required them to install storm drains which connect to the creek. So any rainwater will go empty out into the creek. On my street, we do not have storm drains. So whenever the water ran off, it ran right into the road. And we decided that we wanted all of the water to soak into the ground. We wanted to keep it on site. And so we found somebody who could install a permeable driveway, and that's what this is. So as soon as the water or the rainwater hits that surface, it immediately soaks in. It's almost like a sponge. It does not roll off the driveway. If we had torrential rain, it might, but for the most part, it's quite permeable. And the hardscape, which is a flagstone that we selected, we picked stone that looked like the stone that we dug out of the ground. So that's what this is here. And there are many surfaces that you can go with as a personal choice, and that was our choice. All right, so there are many ways to go about installing a native garden. And you can do it yourself. That's certainly a doable thing. Or you can hire a designer, which we did. We hired a couple of designers, and designers are usually people that go to a junior college and they go to the horticulture department and they take a 2-year course and they get certified that they know their plants and they know how to design. And so they have some skill. But if you go to a landscape architect, they go to a 4-year program or longer, and they have more architectural skills. So they have, you know, different people have different skills and different talents. So it's personal choice. We tried designers, a few designers, and neither one of them got us really excited. And then we hired a landscape architect, and we liked her designs very much. She was very, you know, perfect for us. So we went with her. Now, the other thing that we did, and in this graphic, I embedded a link to an article that you can click on and learn more about the difference between an architect and a designer. And at the end of this presentation, you're going to know a lot more about this subject, where to find them, and how to go about deciding who you want to hire. One of the things that I recommend is, and I'm going to talk about this coming up, is that you visit native gardens. And there is upcoming in April, there is the annual, and it's free. It's the annual growing native garden tour, or going native garden tour. And it's put on every year. It's free. There's a link in my presentation that you can click on and register. And we did that for years. My husband and I went to these, they're usually in April, and they give you a list of addresses, and these are all residential gardens. And you go there and you get to see what they did with natives, how they took something that grows just wild out all around us. If you go hiking in the foothills, you will see all these plants. But they took these and they planted them in their residential garden. And that's where we got a lot of ideas. And we also learned about different professionals that installed those gardens. And we got to see whose style we liked. So that's one way to find either a designer or a landscape architect. So this is what our landscaper came up with. she did something that I thought was really helpful to us. She came up with 3 different ideas. So she had our whole lot designed, but she had features, and there were different features on the 3 different possibilities. And so I just took a red marker and I went through and I said, I like this feature, I like this feature, and I like this feature. And then she took all those things that we liked and she put them into one plan. And that's what we ended up with. And that's what you're seeing right here. And there's a legend that goes with this. So we know everything that's planted in the ground, the things that survived are a lot of them are still there. And this is the front yard. And here you see the permeable driveway. And here you see that little rock wall, the stacked stones that we put in. And we decided that this was going to be an investment. So we had all 4 sides of our property done in one fell swoop. And it was affordable. We were able to afford it at that time. And this was like, we'd owned our house over 20 years by then. And we'd been saving for this. So this was, and the other thing was that we had decided that we were going to stay here. We were not doing this to prepare our house for sale. This is our home. We planned to get old here. And so we wanted it to be designed in a way that we can use it as we age. So I'm going to show you that in the back, one of the ideas she came up with these 3 planters, and these are planter beds. So they're raised planter beds, which are perfect because as we age, we don't want to be bending over or getting down low on the ground. And these have been very useful to isolate our vegetable garden. We eat a lot of vegetables, so we grow our own vegetables in these raised beds. And then here is our patio, and I'm going to show you how we had the original home was built in 1962, and the lot was not leveled. So it had all the ups and downs of the normal topography in our neighborhood. And our neighborhood it's coming off of a hill. So it goes from, actually our property was on the edge of a ravine. And I'm going to show you, let's see, here's a photo, and you can do this too. If you go to Google Maps and get the aerial view of your home, you may get lucky and find one where they took it right about noon, which looks to be what they did here. And so I captured this photo on my computer and enlarged it, and it shows you with the sunlight overhead, it shows you my backyard, and here are the 3 planters I told you about. And there's a little greenhouse, and there's my back fence. And here I put in a little compass so you can see north and south. So to the south is Santa Clara County is to the south. So I'm on the border of Santa Clara County. And so the sun comes up in the morning on the east, and it goes across my property and sets on the west. So that image was very helpful to me as a gardener. And this is one of the first things that we learn as master gardeners, is to figure out where the sun is on our property. So when we lay out our garden. So you can do this too. You can just go to the aerial views on Google Maps, or somehow get a picture of your house so you can see how to figure out where the sun is. So this is going to help you decide how you're going to plant things. All right, so this is what I would mention before. The Growing Natives Garden Tour. This is an annual event. It's been going on for a very long time, and I highly recommend it if you're interested in growing natives. this is the best way to find out what they look like in a residential setting. And they are magnificent. They are just amazing, amazing plants. They're very different to your standard manicured garden plants. And people do amazing things in their gardens. And you go in and you have an address list. So they do it over 2 days. So I think they do the southern part of the peninsula. The southern parts of Santa Clara County addresses are on Saturday, and San Mateo County and San Francisco, if they go up that far, are on Sunday. So you can go both days, and it's free, and it is one of the best educations you're going to get on natives. You'll meet people that are interested in it, and you'll learn about the different designers and landscapers or the individuals that are knowledgeable about native plants. All right, so this is what I was saying about the slope in our property. So our house was originally built in 1962, and it was not leveled. So this slope that you see here, which we took advantage of, this was originally the edge of a ravine. So I mentioned that San Francisco Creek was one property over from ours, and there was a ravine. So when the creek historically flooded, sometimes creeks take shortcuts, and they cut across, and they go through the low levels, and then they connect back to the main creek. Well, it did that exactly. The property next to us is in the ravine, and so it's lower than our property. And so the landscape architect took advantage of the slope in an ingenious way, which I really, really appreciate. She didn't remove it, which would have been difficult because there's a lower level on the other side of this fence. She basically just kept the slope and had all the downspouts around her house connected underground, at least the ones on the patio, and they all end into this low point of our property. So we all know that we want to get the rainwater on our roof to move away from the house, from the foundation. So this was the one way to do it. You put all those pipes under the patio, since we were removing the old patio and putting in a new one, and channeling all that water into this creek. Now, this is called a swale. They also call them rain gardens. And all it is decorative. It's functional in the sense that that's where we direct all water from our roof. And it's a low point, so all the water will just by gravity just naturally roll towards the fence. And she planted it with appropriate plants that look like they belong in that area. And these rocks that you see in the swale, these were all from our collection, our rock piles that we had for at least a decade in different places on our property. So we also decided that we wanted to have a hedge. So we put in, these are holly cherries, I believe, Prunus ictifolia. And we decided that we wanted some fruit trees. So there was an apricot tree here, which we have since removed because it got gigantic. It created a lot of shade. I'll show you a picture after everything's filled in. You'll get to see a picture. But this is of all the pictures that I've taken of our yard, this is absolutely one of my favorites because it really captures what our property looks like in the summertime. We live right next to the dish. So the dish is in walking distance from our property. You've seen that, the radio dish up on the hill. that belongs to Stanford off of 280. So it's very hot and dry. And that is what our backyard feels like. And we wanted it to look that way when it is the sun shining. And I believe that this is really well captured in the plantings here. We also decided that we wanted to remove the aggregate patio, which was the original 1962 patio, and but we wanted to recycle it. So we didn't want to, we wanted to keep as much material on our site. And so the landscaper figure out how to incorporate the pieces of aggregate patio that were broken up, and we turned them into stepping stones on the side yards. I think I have a picture of that. And we also mixed it with the flagstone on the back patio. And I think I have a picture of that. But what you see here is the swale. So the edge of the ravine, so it's the property slopes down towards the fence, and the water all is directed towards that low point. And then we put in an arbor, and because it's very, very sunny in the summertime and it's hot, and we planted two native grapes. And I believe I have a picture coming up. All right, this is the opposite view of that same scene. You see how low, how much this slopes down to the fence. And this is a very young garden. So this is only probably a few months old. And my planter boxes were in, and the first thing we planted, of course, were tomatoes, and they were doing very well. And for the walking surface, for the pathways, we use decomposed granite. And there are many, many products that you can use for walkways. We wanted it to be permeable, just like our driveway. We wanted the water to soak in and hit that water table. So it's decomposed granite. Now, the one thing I don't like about decomposed granite is that when it gets wet, it's kind of like mud. So if you step in it, it leaves a footprint, but it can be renewed. For the mulch, we did cover all of the bare soil with chips. I believe they were cedar chips. So everything, all the plants around them had mulch or rocks. So here you see that swale, or the dry creek, or rain garden. That's another name for it. They're very popular right now. A lot of people are trying to build these. And it's a design element. It has a functional purpose, but it's mostly for design. So in that swale, one of my absolute favorite plants is the California fuchsia. And the California fuchsia comes in many different sizes. This one is considered a ground cover, and it's mounding. It has a very beautiful growth habit. Now it is, I believe it's a hybrid, so it's crossed with something else to make it perform that way. It loves sun. And one of the problems with the apricot tree that we put in that space was that it got so big, it shaded out all the California fuchsia, and they never bloomed again because they like a lot of sun. And so going forward now, I'm going to show you different plants in my garden that perform very well. Someone said that you choose plants that are willing to take the care you're willing to give. And I think for us, that has been the way it's turned out, is that, we have a certain amount of time that we're willing to garden, and that we're willing to, and so we accept that some things didn't make it. We were lucky that when our garden was set up, so we hired a landscape architect, and then we hired a couple of guys who installed it. and they too, they'd gone to the same California State at San Luis Obispo. They went to the same exact program that she'd gone to. And so they were pretty knowledgeable, and they set up our irrigation, and most of our plants survived. So this is the hardest thing for all native plant gardeners, is to figure out how to keep their plants alive that first to that second year. And there's not one answer. There are many variables. It depends on your soil. It depends on your climate. It depends on the plants that you plant, the sun on your property. So I can't give you one answer. I just know that the rule is that you do need to baby the plants when they're brand new, because most of the plants that you put into the ground when you lay out your new garden, they're a gallon, maybe 5 gallon. And most of the gardeners recommend that you not spend a lot of money getting gigantic mature plants, because if you get a young plant and you take care of it properly, it will probably outgrow the large plant faster. So you're wasting your money by getting gigantic plants. That was one of the things that we learned. So most of the plants that went into our newly landscaped garden were 5 gallons to 1 gallon plants. And they did. It was not instant. It took, some of the plants took longer than others, and I'll show you some of those. But this one performed quite well. As I showed you earlier, the swale, it wasn't filled in very much, and it was looking very nice. So this is the epilobium is the California fuchsia, and that's one of my favorite native plants. And as you can see, you can get a ground cover, you can get an intermediate ground, a taller ground cover that's a little more rangy, and then you can get one that's tall. And I think I have a picture. So remember that you are going to get a PDF of this presentation, and all of this information, you can go through these slides and click on these links and learn more about these specific plants. So here is one variety, again, a hybrid. And this is a little bit bigger, bushier than the one that was planted in my garden originally. And then this is a variety that is taller. And these aren't the only ones. So, and here's an article that I found that talks specifically about California fuchsias, and it will tell you about different varieties. So if you like this plant and you want to learn more about it, about its habits, you can read this article. Some other beautiful plants that are in our swale is the blue-eyed grass. And this is what it looks like. It is not a ground cover. It's taller. The leaves look like grass, but then you get these beautiful purple flowers in profusion, and they are quite lovely. And there's a link here that will take you to an excellent source of more information. And then this is penstemon, which is right next to our blue-eyed grass, also planted in the swale. And these are smaller. They're not bushes. They're smaller plants. They don't get gigantic, but their decorative value is phenomenal. I mean, look at this color, and these tubular flowers I just think are exquisite. And this is the backyard patio that I talked about, where we incorporated the aggregate that we removed from the main patio, and we broke it up, and then we fit it with the flagstone. They combined it, and that was one way to use the debris that was created when we tore our backyard up. And I thought that was an ingenious way to use it. Now, originally, this fence is now gone, but originally this was fenced off with a gate, creating a private patio. And off of this patio are 2 bedrooms with sliding doors on the original house. And those 2 bedrooms belong to our 2 kids. And we were thinking, my husband and I, that as we get older, if need be, since we live near Stanford, if we needed extra income, we could always rent those bedrooms to students. And so this private patio was a really good idea. And because you can access this patio from the side yard. So you come in from the front and you walk down the side, the east side of our property, there's a walkway and it accesses this little patio. And so that was our thinking back then. As you see here, there's a little water feature. And these rocks are all those rocks that we collected over the years from our neighbors and from our own property. And we have 2 water features. We have one in the backyard and one in the front yard. That's how many rocks we collected. And also in this picture, let's see, these plants that are planted around the water feature, that's a coyote bush. It's also known as coyote brush. It's a variety that is low growing, and there are different, just like the California fuchsia, there are different heights. There's a very native wild coyote brush that apparently has snuck into my yard and planted itself, because we have coyote bush that is gigantic that I didn't plant. So it is wild. It does, it does plant itself, and that may happen to you. But this variety was low growing, very lush, and it looked beautiful. One year I decided that it needed a haircut, so I came in and I just cut it down to the ground, and it came back. I thought for sure I would have killed it, but no, it came right back. It loves being pruned. So it's a very, very sturdy plant. And it doesn't really have flowers that you can talk about. It may have flowers. I think there's a female and a male version. I don't know which one I have, but it has reseeded itself in my garden. Also in this picture is this piece of wood. Now this is called a snag, and it's just dead wood. And you see them in out in nature, tree trunks break and fall on the ground, and while the insects get in there and make homes, and birds make nests, and amphibians hide under the shade. And so we had a walnut tree that was dead, and we cut it down, and it was beautiful bark. So I took some of the pieces and just scattered it around my garden. And let's see, what else do you see in here? You see that here's a fig in the background. My idea was that I was going to espalier this fig tree. This is just a black mission fig, just ordinary fig. They're in our California climate, they are very, very easy to grow. They don't need a lot of chill hours like some fruits do. And you can manage the height by pruning it. And all this information you can learn from us Master Gardeners if you have questions. Let's see, what else do I have here? I have a citrus tree and a ceanothus. Both of these did not make it for different reasons, but this is 2009. And this backyard, the water feature is still there, the coyote bush is still there, the fig's still there, but then a few other things have changed. So this is the arbor that I mentioned earlier when we first, in our 2009, we added this arbor over our new patio because we get a lot of sun on our backyard patio. And we decided that we were going to grow this native grape. So it's called Roger Red. It's actually a hybrid. It's a cross between a California native grape, not the kind that you use for wine. These are the native California vitis that grows wild. And that was crossed with a European variety that turns colors in the wintertime. And that's its claim to fame. I don't know if this was found already as a hybrid in nature. I don't know the history of it, but I do know that it is a combination of the California native with some other. And this is what it looks like in the fall. So it gets color, and it's quite lovely. That's why it's called Roger Red. And it is extremely vigorous. So we had 2 plants, one on each post of the arbor. And this is what it looks like after I pruned it in the wintertime. I gave it a severe haircut. So it goes dormant in the winter and all the leaves fall off. So you see the skeleton, you see the whole structure of the plant. And that's when you go in and you prune most of the natives to shape them, to reduce their size. I had done the winter before, and pruning stimulates a plant. And this is what it looked like in the summertime. It grows gangbusters. So it gives us a lot of shade. Now, the disadvantage for us of this native grape is that even though it doesn't really produce, it's not like grapes that you use for wine, but it does produce fruit. And every summer we have to go in and we have to remove little clumps of fruit which are edible. They're not poisonous to humans, they're poisonous to dogs. Raisins and grapes are poisonous to dogs. So we have to remove them because for that reason, because if they fall on the pavement or the furniture, they stain it. And this has been an ongoing hassle for all of us, a real pain. It's work, you have to get up there on a ladder, and I won't do that anymore. This is what it looks like underneath. So as you can see, that vitis gives you a lot of screening. This is over the years, I've trained the stem. I guided it along and tacked it to the arbor. And then these are the branches that come out every year. I prune them back and they come back, and we get a nice thick layer of shade, and it's quite beautiful. So if you want to hear more about it, here is the link to this this hybrid grape. This is what it looks like in the summer. This is what it looks like underneath. And another one of our beautiful natives in the background here is the elderberry. So this is a bush that will grow into a tree. So it's really a bush because it has multiple stems. You can train it to become a tree, but it would take a lot of effort. I did prune this when it was young, and then I stopped and just let it do its thing. And this is what we end up with. And so this is the elderberry right here. It's against the back fence. We put it there because it was going to get tall and it was going to screen our second story, which is our master bedroom. We have a window that looks out into our neighbor's yard, right into their house. And that's why it was placed there. And it is a screen for most of the year. It's deciduous, so it loses its leaves in the winter time, which would be the time to prune it, if we were to prune it. And this is what it looks like from our second story when it's loaded with fruit right now. You get these little blueberries. These are also edible, and but they're not, it's more work than it's worth. So we don't we let the birds enjoy them. And then the leaves they dry up around wintertime and fall off. and the fruit falls off. And these do reseed themselves. So we have found a few volunteers throughout our yard and we've dug them up and moved them around. All right. So here's another view of the blue elderberry. As you can see, the stems are quite thick. So at some point, if I were to prune this, I need a saw or an electric appliance to cut that. It's a lot of work. And here's the fruit. And here's a link that will take you to a website that will explain more about this plant. All right. So the coyote bush that I mentioned growing around my water feature was I guess it's considered a dwarf. It's low growing, and it was a variety called Twin Peaks. I assume is a hybrid of the native coyote bush, and some other variety. I'm not sure which, but it was well behaved. And then here's a Roger Red that I mentioned, and this link will take you to a website that will tell you more about its origin. So this is another one of my favorites. And it's one of my favorites because not only is it beautiful, but it has survived. So it has, once it got established, it pretty much takes care of itself. This is one of the few plants in my yard that does not like to be watered in the summertime. And it has survived our lengthy droughts. Not all of my natives have survived our droughts, but this one has. And it has also been very easy to propagate. So whenever I give it a haircut, I can take some of the stems and just stick them in a pot of dirt or into the garden directly and forget about it, and it will root itself and start growing. And this is a hybrid of the California native currant, sanguineum, which is a red currant. There are many different ribes out there, but this is one of them. And there is a native, and I have a picture of that's different. This is a hybrid. So this was crossed with something, again, European. And what you end up with is a bigger, showier product. So the bush is quite a bit larger, and the flowers are quite a bit showier than the kind that you would find growing, say, Edgewood Park. If any of you hike in Edgewood Park, there are a lot of natives there. And I've seen the native currant there, and I'm going to show you a picture of it in our garden. But this is a wonderful, beautiful plant, and we have it in our front yard, and I believe we put some in our backyard too. This is that same plant in the autumn. So not every year does it change colors. This was one year where I noticed the leaves actually change colors, and I don't know what makes the difference, but it will do that. This is the King Edward, the 7th, yes. All right, this is the native version. And as you can see, it is not as spectacular as the hybrid. So it is quite a bit smaller. It has a very dainty presentation, in my view. The flowers are beautiful, but they are not nearly as colorful or as large as the hybrid. So this plant was amazing. We had bought it before we did our landscaping, and we had to dig it up. The plants we wanted to keep, we dug up and put them in pots, and this was one of them. And so it lived in a pot for a while, and then we put it back into the landscape garden, and it survived and did well, and it's very pretty. I'm very attached to it for that reason. It survived. Here's another very pretty plant that's in our front yard. We had several manzanitas. This is that category. And manzanitas, there are many, many different kinds of manzanitas. And we had some that were ground covers, and those did not last very long. And this one is not a ground cover, but it's not large either. And you know that usually manzanitas have those very red, twiggy kind of branching. This one has a little bit, but it's closer to the ground, and it's mostly the leaves that are beautiful. And it's next to our front door, so it's kind of like a um, there's a name for it that I'm forgetting, but it's one plant in that area, and it's survived our care, and it doesn't, I prune it every now and then to shape it mostly. So it's been a beautiful plant. I love this picture where it's backlit. It is really pretty. Another one of the tough plants in my yard is toyon, which is also called Christmas berry. And this one is planted all over our interstate, our freeways in the dividers there. And you've probably seen it. Sometimes it looks like pyracantha, but it's most probably toyon. And you know that it's toyon because it's around Christmas time that the berries turn red. Now I have several of these, and when they were put in the ground, I'm pretty sure they were 5-gallon pots, and they took several years before they got mature, big. And they took probably about 7 years before they started to show berries. So they are very slow, but they do get large and heavy, and we do have to prune them back and support their branches. There's another part of this is in the front yard. We had to, we took pieces of inner tube and wire and wired it to the fence to hold it in place. So, it's a bush, but it can get quite large. Again, it's one that once it gets established, you pretty much just keep an eye on it if you have droughts, because you do want to give it water in the wintertime if it's not raining. They depend on that water in the wintertime, and you prune it to shape it. This is another magnificent plant, silk tassel, and it's also a bush. It's very different to anything you would see in a manicured garden. These are the flowers, and you can train it as a tree. And in fact, I have a picture here. This is in San Francisco. I believe it's the Rainbow Grocery Store. This is a very old bush, and somebody trained it to become a tree. And just look at that. I think that is magnificent. I would be so happy if I could get my silk tassel to grow in to look like that. I mean, that really shows off its beauty when it's in bloom. It's really amazing. And so I have in here a link that tells you about the plant, and this tells you how to train a bush into a tree. Not this particular, but it will give you an idea. Basically, you're going to cut the stems, you're going to pick the main stem, and you're going to prune it and train it into the shape of a tree. And it will grow. Eventually, that main trunk that you select, or two trunks if you want to split it, will grow in. As it matures, it will get bigger and bigger and bigger. This is another success in my garden. This was actually transplanted from another location. I dug these up. So what happens with the native iris is that you put them in as a 1-gallon rhizome. They're rhizomes, just like your other irises. And they they grow pretty rapidly, and they uh, you need to dig them up at some point and divide them because they get too crowded, and just like other irises, very similar. And so I did that at the right time of year. There's a right time of year to do it. And you can find this out from master gardeners that are native garden in San Carlos. They teach this class. So I dug these up and I moved them to this location. And when they came up, I took this picture because I thought they looked so beautiful right there. This is next to one of my raised beds on the back patio. They're very easy to grow. They don't need a lot of attention. You don't need to prune them. The only thing you need to do is make sure that they have water when they need the water. You don't fertilize them. You can give them compost as a top dressing, but they really don't need that. They as long as they get watered and pruned and thinned out, they're happy. So they're very easy. Another native is a dogwood in my front yard that has never performed very dependably. This is 1 year where it bloomed, and I'm not sure what caused it to bloom, if I did something differently or if it's just the climate. As you can see below, I had planted some of those same irises. The ones you saw before were white. These are purple. I planted them at the base. And here's the Pacific dogwood. This is the native Pacific dogwood. Now, I believe that mine is a cross between a Japanese and the California native, because the flowers are bigger and they're showier than the Pacific dogwood. I believe the Pacific dogwood is not as showy. So it's possible that this is the wrong plant in the wrong place. It probably needs more sun. It's underneath, as you can see in the background, there is a gigantic oak overhead that shades my front yard quite a bit. There is some eastern morning sun that comes from the east side, but it's not probably enough. So this plant is still there, and we're debating what to do and what we would replace it with. But it is a beautiful plant just in itself, and I wanted to show that to you. Here's another one. This is in our backyard. This on the left is when it's in bloom, and I believe that's around summertime. Cherry blooms May to June. And on the right is what it looks like in the winter time, when it doesn't, or after it blooms and I haven't given it any water, and it would look a lot better if I gave it some water. And the reason that I don't is because I'm afraid, and this is what's tricky about natives, is some do not want water, and if you water them, you could kill them. But some are happier with a little bit of water. So now what I do is I prune it after it blooms, and I try to get rid of all this dried up dead wood and just keep it a little tidier and give it a little bit of water, and make sure that I mulch. It's got a thick layer of mulch around it. But when it blooms, it is spectacular. And that's what it looks like. But it's a very, very short window. Here's another plant that I absolutely love. And this is a sad story. So originally, when we bought our house, I told you that it had a manicured garden. And in the front yard, next to the driveway, was a bush. And I decided this is before I was a master gardener, I was learning to garden, I wanted to turn it into a tree. So I started pruning the bush, and I did get it into one stem, and it did get bigger, it got taller. And as it got taller, it started getting more sun. And all of a sudden it started to bloom, and it looked like this on the right. I had these beautiful they're called panicles, I believe. And it just looks so pretty. But unfortunately, it also got a disease. And the disease goes, I think insects go into the flowers and bring a bacteria that gets down into the stem and down into the trunk. And then when I found out it wasn't a native, after we planted our native garden, we removed it. And I regretted that because it was such a pretty plant. Now I wanted something native that looked like it. And that's what this is. It's called chokecherry. And I have not been successful in getting them to grow in my garden. For some reason, you know, I wish that I had my Portuguese laurel back because it was so pretty when it bloomed. Now, there is another one that looks very much like that, and that's a California buckeye. It has panicles, white flowers, and it is a California native. And these are all around our neighborhood. In fact, if any of you have been around it, you've probably seen, these are what they call their chestnuts. These are their seeds. And these fall into the soil and they root themselves and they just multiply like crazy. So if you drive down 280 near Page Mill Road on the west side of Page Mill heading south, you will see a whole hill that looks like this on the right. And during the time that the buckeyes are in bloom, they look like this. This is the garden version. This is a buckeye, believe it or not, in a landscaped setting. I wanted you to see what a native looks like in a landscape setting. And, you know, I've asked myself, well, if I can't get the chokecherry and the prunus lusitanica is not a native, then maybe I should just plant a buckeye. And I'm debating. I may do that. My neighbor had one that was absolutely gorgeous, but it was too close to her house and it was causing damage, so she had to remove it, which was sad because it was a very old plant and it was beautiful. This is another very successful plant, very easy to grow. It's a bush called mock orange. I don't think it has anything to do with citrus. It's just the name. And I think the fragrance is somewhat citrusy. And it's very pretty. It can get quite large. And if it's happy, wherever you plant it, it will get large and it will live a very long time. And you can take cuttings and you can propagate it that way. So it is a very easy to grow plant. This is a ground cover that I have in my yard in different places. You can use it as mulch or just to cover up bare areas. It's very slow growing, but it's very easy to propagate. So it's long, it shoots out these long branches, and you just take the branch and remove a few of the leaves and then put that stem in contact with soil, either bury it in the soil, put a rock on it to hold it, and it will root into the soil, and then you can come back and dig it up and move it somewhere else. So that's one easy way to propagate this kind of plant. And it's the leaves are shiny. Supposedly it has flowers. I don't think I've ever seen flowers on it. It's possible that mine doesn't get enough sun. I'm not sure what it is, but it is pretty, and I've left it where it was originally planted. This is the hedge that I mentioned in the beginning, that when we put in the swale on that the sloped side of our property, there was a wooden fence with our neighbor, and we decided we wanted a hedge, and this is what we put in. It benefits from pruning. This looks pretty untidy because we are not fussy gardeners. We don't spend a lot of time. We do what we have to do, and that's pretty much it. But it would look better if we got out there and pruned it. It would look more like a manicured hedge if we pruned it some more. it might, help it get bushier in the bare spots, that too. And, you can always come in and choose what branch, if you want to lower the height, you can choose a branch, and we will teach you at Master Gardeners how to do that. So you don't want to top it. You don't want to just come and give it a crew cut and make it all one level. That usually doesn't look very pleasing. It's better to prune it properly if you want to reduce the height. And these are the things that I had to learn once my garden was in place. And, it takes time, and I make mistakes. Here's another one. Now we have a little, I guess it's called an arbor over our garage. And I had originally been trying to grow climbing roses, but there wasn't enough sun. They weren't doing very well. They were getting diseases and they weren't blooming. So the landscape architect picked this plant, and it is a beautiful plant. I've seen this growing wild, and what it does, usually when it's growing wild, it scrambles over other plants. So it just climbs on top of them. And I don't think it's a good choice for our purposes. We have wires, and you have to take it and you have to tie it to the support and help it get up onto the vertical, to the horizontal surface that it's going to live on. And it's very, very fragile. It's almost, these stems are like glass, and they break very easily. It's a beautiful plant. It has its purpose. It's happier as a ground cover because it spreads like crazy. I have it now kind of invading other parts of my yard. But we're looking for an alternative as a vine to put in that place. And here are two pictures. This is what the garden looks like in the winter time. When this is the elderberry. Remember that I told you the elderberry is a bush that's really a tree because it gets quite tall. And this is in the winter time when it's deciduous, so it's lost all its leaves, and you just see the stems. And if we were to prune this tree, this would be the time to do it, when you can see all those stems. This is the side yard. This is the original picture that I started with, that I showed you. You're entering my backyard from the front, and this is what it looks like in the winter. It's, this is before we cleaned it up, and then we did clean it up, and we put in new plantings in the swale. We weeded it, and it's gotten a lot of watering from winter rains, and it looks a lot fresher. In the backyard, you can see there's a big house. Now, when we bought this house in 1985, that house was not there. Unfortunately, we are in San Mateo County, and they allow properties to turn their footprint, and so that's like 5 feet from our back fence. And we're trying to figure out what kind of a hedge we're going to put in there to screen that a little bit. All right, so the absolute best place to learn more about natives in the state of California is the California Native Plant Society. Now, it's free. You can get their information, but you can also join as a member and participate in many, many activities. They have so many activities. They have hikes, they have educational events, but they also have a YouTube website that you can view all their recorded presentations for free. The chapters that serve our area are Santa Clara County and San Francisco County, which is called the Yerba Buena chapter. The other source of information that I recommend is tomorrow. There's an in-person presentation, pretty much what I've talked about today, but in person, by the person that actually designed my garden. And she is a member of the California Native Plant Society, and she's giving a talk on their behalf on designing and maintaining native plants. So if you like to go to in-person presentations, I highly recommend this. I believe it's not going to be recorded. So the only way that you could go to this presentation is in person. And you would meet her, and you know, I'm gonna give you a way to find other people so you can, you know, do your homework and figure out if you want to hire somebody, you're gonna find out how to do this. CalScape is through, I believe it's CNPS that sponsors CalScape. Now, this is the go-to site for native plants. It's my favorite site. And there was an old version, which is being phased out, and there is now a new version, which I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around. And I believe this will take you to the new version. Yes, this is the new CalScape. So what you do is it's free. You can set up an account and you can do research, and you can save all the plants that you like on your list, on your account. You can create lists of plants, and you do it by putting in your address, and it will tell you what plants will grow in your zip code. This is the new version of CalScape. It is the best source. Next, going on these tours, which are coming up April 12th and 13th. So the 12th is the south part of the San Francisco Peninsula, and Sunday is northern part. So San Mateo County will be on Sunday. And one of the gardens on that tour, that free tour, is the San Carlos Native Plant Garden, which was designed and planted and cared for by Master Gardeners. And they've done a fabulous job there. So I recommend that you go visit that too. This is, again, that same page that I showed you where you could find out more about plants. You can do this yourself. That's perfectly fine. Or you can learn and hire somebody to do the designing for you. Now, one of the new features in the new CalScape is they have a design feature. So you go in there and it gives you choices, filters. You know, you tell it what kind of garden you have. If you live in the forest, you live on the coast, you live in the foothills, and it will. So you tell it what kind of plants, and it will come up with an idea. And so you can go with their ideas or just use that more as reference. These are a list of the sources that I use for this presentation. As you can see, all of these have a link embedded in them. And some of them are videos, and some of them are just documents that you can download or websites that you can visit and learn more about native plants. And these are excellent. All of these are excellent resources. The other thing that's important, we as Master Gardeners need to remind you, is that you need to think about fire to make your garden fire safe, that you plan a garden in a way that will not, if there's a fire anywhere near you, that your landscape and your hardscape, because fences are important too, that they do not contribute to your house burning down. And I believe that this link will take you to all sorts of resources on how to design a fire-wise garden. And there's also apparently a new law in the state of California that requires you to not plant along the perimeter of your house. So we originally had put our stepping stones down the middle of the side yard. And that's traditionally how landscape has been done. And then you have the plants that are next to your house, and then you have plants on the other side. We dug up all those stepping stones and moved them to the side of the house. So it's best that you put all of your hardscape in the first 5 feet of your of your house, and that you put your plants away from the house, and that you pick plants that are fire safe, and that you don't have anything flammable like wooden arbors, fences attached to your house. So, this is, all of us are learning and changing as we go. And this is, if you have any questions for the Master Gardeners, I embedded my email link in the very beginning of the presentation, which you are going to get a copy of as a PDF in your mail. We will mail you a PDF of this very slideshow. And if you didn't get it, please email me or contact the Master Gardeners and we will get back to you. So this ends my presentation and I'm available for questions.
Right. Thank you, Leslie. And yeah, any questions that you guys have, go ahead and enter them in the chat now. I'll be reading them out to Leslie as we get them. I do have one question here. Do you have any favorite annuals that you plant each year?
Well, they reseed themselves. California poppies reseed themselves. So, and Clarkia, all the Clarkias reseed themselves. So I like plants, the annuals that I can plant once and they come back. And so in my neighborhood, along our lane, I've scattered wildfire seeds, and the Clarkia, every year they come back and they keep spreading. I've seen the wind blowing them up the hill near across the street of the highway. So poppies, let's see, the blue-eyed grass, I think. I don't know if that's a perennial or an annual. I can't remember. But Clarkia, I'm sure, is an annual, and then the poppy. Those usually annuals are the ones that we plant each year, right? Or they come back each year. So those would be two easy ones.
All right. And then let's see. Since you live in a riparian area, have you considered planting a spice bush in that space where you see the neighbor's house?
A what kind of bush?
Says spice bush.
How do you spell that?
S-P-I-C-E.
S-T-I-C-E.
P is in Peter.
Spice bush. Actually, I think I have a spice bush. Isn't that the one with a little red flower? I think it is. I think I have that. And if it's the one that I'm thinking of, I planted it because it likes moisture. So I planted it in the area of my backyard that has the most moisture. But I believe that location does not provide the plant with enough sun because it grows, but it is never bloomed. So it's kind of like that dogwood that I talked about in the front yard that grows but never blooms. I think it's the wrong plant in the wrong place. But yeah, spice bush does like moisture. And that's one of the things that you will learn in Cowscape, is it will tell you how much water that plant needs. And I think in my resources, I put in a list of plants that are easy, middle, and hard. And it may be based on their water needs.
All right, and we've got a question. Can you talk about your decision to use permeable concrete versus pavers?
Unknown caller.
Yes, we along with touring the native gardens every year, we also went to any of the garden shows that were offered in our area, and we did our homework on pavers, and came up with a decision that we wanted it to look natural, So we went with flagstones, and we found a stone that looked like it was the same color. It looked like the rocks that we were digging up. That was just a personal choice. But I have my neighbors on either side have pavers, and they look very nice. It's just for us, it looks more manicured, and I guess we wanted something that just looked more natural. There's a disadvantage with what we chose. They grow, it grows moss. You know, it gets mossy, and it gets kind of slimy when they're wet. And because they're set in sand, they're not set in concrete, so that all the water in between the cracks, all the water filters down. We get weeds, so we have to weed it. But sometimes pavers are like that too. But that was our reason for doing flagstones instead of pavers.
All right. Let me see. Another annual lupine. Do you have that in your garden? Receiving,
What was the question again?
do you have the annual lupine in your garden? That's also a reseeding plant.
Yeah. No, I saw a yellow lupin in someone's presentation, I believe it was, and I've been looking for it. That's one I want to grow. I want to add it to my garden. I have grown the arroyo lupin, which is a very common lupin around this area. I have grown that uh, in along the roadway. There's I showed you at the beginning, we have like a paved access road to our property, and then there's dirt on either side. And I've scattered seed there, and I've grown lupin there. But lupin is fabulous. So it's not in my garden now, but it probably will be in the future.
Oh. Has your garden inspired other homeowners in the area to also go native?
I don't know if it has. They haven't told me. I have seen several native or partially native plantings in the neighborhood. So I have no idea if I had any kind of influence, but the water districts and a lot of agencies, cities are promoting that people convert their lawns to natives to save water, and for all the reasons that we went native. And so more people are doing that. So I see it happening more and more.
All right. That's always good to see.
Yeah.
I don't currently have any other questions here, so let me see, as I say that. So I do have a lot of compliments here that people are really appreciative of all of this helpful information. And yeah, thank you all for staying and listening. And thank you, Leslie, for presenting with us.
Well, thank you all. And like I said, you're going to get a PDF of this very slideshow with all the embedded links. And I am happy, more than happy, to correspond with you via email. And if you would like to come see my garden, you're welcome to do that too. So just shoot me an email, and we'll get together. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Everybody have a great day. And we do have an upcoming class about tomatoes next month that you might want to check in and see. Yeah. All right, thank you all.